And I am talking about our commissions disappearing. All right, that's the title. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to go over a little bit of an overview on, I'm going to read some headlines to you here that are real headlines. But if you're watching, you're wanting to know all the news that I've been watching, all the media that has been talking about commissions lately, what does it all mean? I've had a lot of questions offline from friends and clients that are just curious about what's going on, what's happening to sort of the real estate industry. The news has died down a little bit, and part of my delay in addressing it is there's been so much chaos, and it has taken some time to get to the root of what's actually happening. What changes are actually happening versus what's being said that's going to happen. And so I feel like I have a really good grasp on a few points that are changes. If you're watching this, you might be interested as a buyer or a seller, how these changes are going to impact you. So I want to go over those. And then I want to share some things that I'm excited about, just how it'll change the marketplace. So that's kind of where we're headed. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. We'll talk about some points of the settlement that are, again, are actual changes, and then how those changes impact you as a buyer or a seller. So a few headlines. One is from Fox. It says, realtors agree to axe 6% commissions in NAR lawsuit settlement. Next one from New York Times says, NAR agrees to slash commissions to settle lawsuits. And CNN says the 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agrees to seismic settlement. So if I read those, I'm probably thinking or wondering, I probably have questions just like you and many people have. And that is, are realtors going away altogether? If I have an agent, what does that mean for them? Are commissions going down? So there's a lot of questions. So the goal of this video is to bring some clarity to the chaos of the media around this issue. So that's it. One thing that's really worth noting is that these changes aren't going to happen until July, pending court approval. So nothing has changed yet. There's no reason to believe that the changes won't be approved, and assuming that they are, that'll happen in July. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. I'd be happy to respond to them either in video, or I will, depending on the complexity of your question, respond to the question in the notes, or in the comments rather. So here's the deal. To summarize the spirit of it really is transparency. Instead of commissions being paid from one broker to the other, really what the lawsuit, or the settlement rather, the spirit of it, the change, what is it going to change? It's going to change transparency and clarity of who's paying what, to whom, and for what. And it's really on the buy side. In my opinion, this doesn't change the listing side. There's a couple of ways that I'll talk about, but not directly like it does the buy side. So there's really, the new way is going to start in July. The old way has been an agent represents a buyer, and the listings broker compensates the buyer's agent's broker. And so to some degree, you could say a buyer's agent is free, and that is not going to be anymore. Again, the spirit of it is clarity. And so 3 points. Number one of the settlement are agents will be required to have a representation agreement before showings. So let's talk about that for a minute. Agents will be required to have a representation agreement before showings. That's one change that the settlement is going to make. In the past, it's been very common in the industry, not necessarily with myself or my team. And I'm not here necessarily to talk about how my team has operated or how we're going to operate going forward. I'm happy to, but the point of this really is to bring clarity to the chaos in the media. So Agents will be required to have a representation agreement before showings. In the past, the old way has been in the industry, sort of out there in the marketplace across the country, is you see a home online, you drive by a sign, you call an agent, maybe you know them, oftentimes you don't. You set up a showing. You might see 50 homes with an agent, which, again, not to get into the number, but you might go see a lot of homes with an agent and never have a conversation about two things. Number one, who are you representing? What is the nature of our relationship? Is it functionary or is it fiduciary? And we can talk about the differences of those shortly. But it's also who's paying you and how much. And so a lot of times agents, there's as much confusion about that or lack of clarity out there about that as there are what is the required down payment for a loan. A lot of people still think you have to have a 20% down payment to buy a home. Is that a good idea? Probably, but do you have to have it? No. But that's another topic in another video. The second point of the settlement that I want to share is that agents cannot make more than the buyer agreement states. So the new way is if you call any agent on a listing or if you find them online or whatever, the new way is they are not supposed to show you a home until you all sit down online, in person, whatever, and agree to the nature of the relationship and have a written agreement on who's paying what, so the buyer paying the buyer's agent, and what is their fee, all right? So whatever that fee is, and I'm going to get into this in just a moment, but if a seller is offering a fee that is, if a seller is offering to cover a cost more than what the buyer and the buyer's agent have agreed to, the buyer's agent is not allowed to make more than what the buyer rep agreement states. All right. So there might be, some listings might offer a bonus of some kind. That's rare, but some do. And so if whatever's being offered on a listing is more than what the buyer and the buyer's agent have agreed to, they are limited by what the buyer agreement states. So that's number two. Number three is commissions can no longer be offered or advertised rather on a listing, but a seller can offer concessions. Again, when you get into the practical, granular, when you get to closing, the closing statement, if you have a buyer's agent, could be compensated the same amount as what you have paid maybe an agent in the past and look literally exactly the same on a closing statement as it did in the past. The difference is everybody knows the nature of the relationship, who's paying whom, and for what before anybody gets started. That's the biggest difference. So again, to summarize the points of the settlement that I think are relevant for the average consumer out there, for you would be agents will be required to have a representation agreement before showings. Agents cannot make more than that agreement states and has been agreed to between the buyer and the buyer's agent. Third, commissions can no longer be advertised on a listing, but a seller can offer concessions. All right, so that's a summary of the settlement. Again, I read some of these news headlines, and I haven't heard anything in here yet that justifies the titles of so much of the media that was out there. But that's okay and not surprising. Buying side changes. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what does this mean for the buy side. I'll talk a little bit about what it means for the seller side. So one of the changes that this is going to, again, pending approval and starting in July, one of the changes is that buyers will have to agree upfront to the price. We talked about that, even if the seller is covering it. So it's not that a lot of the news sort of almost that I read anyways, almost portrayed the buyer's agent is going to have to come out of pocket, full amount of cash for whatever for whatever fee they agree to pay the buyer's agent. And that's not true. Number one, the seller can cover it in the form of concessions, not commissions. Again, this is just a sort of a nuanced change, but it's all meant for clarity and transparency. Let's see. So the other thing is the buyer does need to be prepared to cover it. However, so if the seller, in other words, don't get into an agreement if you can't in good faith follow through with the agreement. In practice, the seller, though, can cover through the form of a concession whatever fee you have agreed to pay your buyer's agent. Hope that makes sense. But there's no more the seller pays my commission. But they can pay, and this is really important, the seller can pay concessions that covers your commissions, and this is really important, it does not count against the max seller contribution that whatever type of loan that you're getting, they have a maximum amount of percentage that a seller can pay. So on a certain type of loan, it might state that the seller cannot contribute more than 3% towards your closing cost. However, it does not apply to this commission that has been agreed to in advance between a buyer and their agent. So that is also something that is very, very important to know. Commissions, this is just my note, commissions on both buying and selling have always been negotiable. There has never been a time when a buyer, if they wanted to, couldn't go self-represent and just not have an agent. That's completely an option. Or on the buy side or sell side to ask questions, what's the value I'm receiving? Some sellers interview multiple agents, and part of that conversation could be, are you negotiable on your commissions? And that's a conversation between the agent and the seller or buyer. So those are some things that are changing. I think in practice for buyers, what can you expect might be a little bit different going forward? What is the new way? And I think one of the big things is that buyers are going to tend to interview buyers' agents, similar to what we've always seen sellers. Sellers have always, I've been in this business, a while, and I have rarely do I see buyers interview buyers' agents and sort of compare value and process and experience and that sort of thing. On the listing side, on the selling side, it is much more common. So I think that we are going to see buyers interview buyers' agents because they are now going to perceive the process as I am responsible for this buyer's agent's fee being paid versus, well, the seller is going to cover it kind of no matter what, so I don't have to think about it. All right, so that's one big change. I want to talk a little bit about as you're going through this process and maybe you're interviewing folks, sort of the difference between a functionary and a fiduciary. All right, so I've got some notes. My team looks at this occasionally, really as a filter to go, are we operating the way that we believe we should to serve our clients in the highest possible manner, looking out for their best interests truly from start to finish. So a functionary is going to have a shallow relationship, assumes the least responsibility, and sort of reports data and information. Whereas a fiduciary, which is really what you want, and I think it's important that all agents or the buyer rep, even in the past, are supposed to function in this way. I don't know what your experience is with agents. I have purchased real estate in other markets where I needed to have an agent. And so I have experience like you where I've worked with really great agents that would function as a fiduciary, and other ones are operating as sort of a low-level functionary. So shallow relationship, assumes least responsibility, and reports data and information. A fiduciary is going to have a deep relationship. They're going to understand what you're looking for. They're going to get to know you at a deeper level than just hey, you want to buy a house? Let's go open some doors and look at houses. That's a part of it, but that's only scratching the surface. So fiduciary has deep relationship, accepts the most responsibility, and interprets and advises on data information, doesn't just pass it along. A functionary reacts to requests, focuses on tasks, and tells and sells. A fiduciary anticipates needs, focuses on outcomes, and educates and guides. Again, to me, the kind of people that I want to work with outside of real estate, if it is in finance or taxes or whatever it is, the fiduciary I am looking for all the time, and even in non sort of just anywhere. If I'm at a restaurant or wherever it may be, when I see people operate in this sort of take ownership fiduciary way, it gets me really excited about wanting to support their business. So if you're like me, you really appreciate and can discern the difference. A functionary is replaceable and minimally paid. A fiduciary is irreplaceable and highly paid. So again, when I do my taxes, I'm not looking for the cheapest. I'm not looking for the most expensive. I'm looking for somebody who's really, really, really good, who can help me see how to file my taxes most efficiently so they don't pay a penny more than I need to. And they're also anticipating based on my business and the things around sort of my life. They're helping me make plans so that over, call it, the next few years, I'm aware of things I can do to be most tax efficient. So those are some examples of functionary versus fiduciary. A couple stories to tell. One is this idea that I think highlights this concept of market knowledge, and that is, you might have heard this story before, but an air conditioning guy is called over. He comes over, takes a look at the unit, grabs his hammer, hits it, it starts working. He's there for under 5 minutes, bills the homeowner for $100. Homeowner complains, you're only here for 5 minutes. And then he sends an invoice that says, essentially sort of dissects the service. And I think it's, something like, $5 to, take the time to look at the unit, $95 to know where on the unit to hit the hammer. So it's a simple, kind of a silly story, but it does make sense. And that has been my experience outside of real estate. And I fully believe that that there's just a lot that goes into what people are worth in a professional sense when it comes to what they get paid or don't get paid. So those are some changes of how this is going to impact buyers. On the selling side, how is the NAR lawsuit going to change how things may function a little bit on the seller side? Number one, you might be leaving your house less. You might have a lot less showings. If there is an uptick in unrepresented buyers, for two reasons. Number one, there could be a lot of buyers out there that are wanting to see homes that just haven't gone through the process of financing. So I would recommend for our clients, I would recommend for you if you're watching this, I would not open my house ever to an unrepresented buyer unless I knew absolutely sure who they are and that they have gone through a qualification process financially, and they can, I have confidence that they can afford the home that they are walking through. Otherwise, I'm going to recommend they find somebody else's house to walk through. All right. So second thing is that as an industry, there are varying degrees of professionalism, experience, and willingness to have conversations. There's a lot of agents out there that are going to be very uncomfortable having an upfront conversation about their value, either because they don't know what their value is or they don't provide the value that people appreciate. And so I think you're going to see a lot of agents exit the business. And therefore, there's just going to be less, frankly, agents out there to serve the clients that are left over. We'll see what happens, but I think that I'd be surprised if increasingly in July and beyond, there's actually less showings. Hopefully the quality of those showings is higher. You have more serious buyers. So not a bad thing for sellers. The other thing is just, So the other thing that I want to talk about is just what I'm excited about in the marketplace. And that is simply that I love the transparency that this is bringing and what it is forcing, what it's going to force me and my team and anybody out there in the marketplace to do is to know our value, articulate our value, and have an upfront conversation. And so not only do I love that sort of directness and clarity, but also what I love about it is that, as I mentioned before, I think buyers are going to be interviewing more agents than they had in the past, and not just settle for the first one that they happen to bump into. And so in that sense, I think that there is going to be more competition. And I am all for a meritocracy when it comes to the marketplace. So I don't want to get paid for more value than I provide ever. And I'm okay with somebody else getting business if I don't deserve it. And the flip side is true. If I am providing more value than somebody else in the marketplace, and then I want to be, I deserve that business, and I should be compensated in that way. And you, the consumer, is going to get to choose. And so that's what I just appreciate about it. It gives, I think, more transparency and more control over sort of the value that a consumer receives. So in that sense, I'm really excited about the changes. I'm really excited about what the marketplace might look like 12 to 24 months from now, because it is going to take time. So I appreciate you watching. This has been an update. Hopefully this has brought clarity. I'm looking at the time. It's been 22 minutes, so it is a long video. I hope this has been clarifying, and appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and we'll get them answered. We'll see you on the next video.